international support.
Region of Donbass, way beyond the border of Donbass, and the question really is just how far and how intense this what's being called an invasion is going to continue, and what that will trigger in terms of Ukrainians panicking, and what that panic actually means for security here on the ground.
What it sounds like there is the development of an information war, the sowing of
and basically preparing themselves for, I guess, some engagements that they'd never really thought that as fire brigade servicemen and women or emergencies they'd have to really confront.
It sounds like a similar reaction to what Funny was just reporting from the capital, but of course you're so much close to where a great deal of the action is, Nick. I guess the mood there is one of much more urgency.
Well, on the other hand, you have to remember that in small towns, people often don't have the resources, just financial resources, to go anyway. The middle class citizens of Kiev are more likely to have dollars and euros and connections abroad and some kind of option to leave the country. Here, lots of people told me that they were just going to try their best to stitch it out. Although people in small villages and towns don't have any particular bomb shelters to go to. They maybe have a cellar, but that's not really very deep and runs the risk of having their own house fall on top of them. So there was a kind of stoic acceptance of the situation. Some people were telling me that they were annoyed with themselves that they hadn't stocked up on food or cash, as had been recommended in previous weeks. But no panic, as you heard say, people, yes, trying to queue, trying to get stuff, but not losing their nerve, not shouting at each other, keeping their calm. And I think that is just down to the fact that this country has been through war for 8 years, and especially here in this part of the country that is close to that Donbass region, has seen military casualties on a regular basis. This is not something people are seeing for the first time. Yes, it's on a far bigger scale. It's coming from all different directions, and that's going to be the biggest problem for Ukraine's forces, to deal with those attacks coming from Belarus, coming from Russia north of Kiev and from the east and from annexed Crimea. Although, as we also heard, questions about the reports coming in, how much of that is actually Russian information warfare, an attempt to intimidate Ukraine with fakes. It's obviously very difficult to try and verify the video we're seeing online of various attacks to actually be sure that the locations are those that are being given. But certainly hours of extraordinary stress here in Ukraine, but no sign that average Ukrainians are really losing their heads and panicking for now.
Nick, we've been reporting on the build-up of troops along the borders over the past days and weeks, and now we're hearing reports this morning of these explosions and incursions in various spots in the south, in the east, where you are, also in central parts of the country and in the capital. Can you give us more of an idea of exactly what's going on?
And based on information that is available to me online, and as I said, it's very difficult to verify, it does seem like there is a big offensive going on in Donbass, particularly in the Luhansk region. Ukrainian sources saying that the Ukrainian military was actually able to rebuff some of those attacks and regain territory being temporarily lost. Not verified. There are also some reports of Russian pressure coming near Kharkiv, Ukraine's second biggest city, 50 kilometers from the border. Some reports even of some Russian forces in Kharkiv, although that remains to be seen if that's actually accurate. Then reports coming from Crimea, annexed Crimea in the south. There are even reports of Russian military activity coming from the Black Sea in Odessa, another major city on the Black Sea coast, Ukraine's main port. It's all very difficult to verify right now, but it does seem like the jump through this is very, very widespread. Just to give you a sense of how difficult this is going to be, Ukraine has a 2,000-kilometer long border with Russia, and with Belarus it has a further 1,000-kilometer border. Now, we heard from NATO and the satellite images of Russian troops in Belarus on so-called exercises in recent weeks, and they're saying there are about 30,000 Russian troops in Belarus. The Belarusian border is very, very close to Kiev. This is a very, basically this is Kiev's backyard.
Of Russian planes, but the Ukrainian army simply, and the Ukrainian military, is not a match for the force that we've seen assembled here by Vladimir Putin. This is what lay behind the warnings that we've seen in recent weeks, is the scale of this force, the number of battalions that Vladimir Putin has moved to the north, to the east, to the south, completely surrounding Ukraine on 3 sides. So it is doubtful that the Ukrainians will be able to stand up to this onslaught for very long. So then it becomes a question, essentially, of what happens next. Looking at this from the outside world, the Western world has obviously done as much as it felt it could do to deter this from taking place with threatening sanctions. And already imposing some sanctions after the recognition of these regions early in the week.
But also by bringing in troops themselves to neighbouring countries.
That's true. But of course, that's another level. That's not going to protect Ukraine. That's about protecting countries like Latvia. And it was very interesting, of course, and compelling to hear the defence minister of Latvia just now speaking to us. Those countries are the front line of NATO defences. Ukraine is not going to receive any Western troops to defend it. So it's, in military terms, it's standing alone. It has received a certain amount of weapons in recent weeks from Western countries, not including Germany, and that's caused a lot of discussion about Germany's responsibilities. But in terms of actual troops on the ground, that's not going to happen. Joe Biden's been very clear about that, and of course that would present the risk of a confrontation directly between the two superpowers, the US and Russia, and that could lead to even more serious war, obviously.
On the topic of Germany, we saw Germany come to the table as far as sanctions go and really pull out that big card with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, putting that on hold, that project, which will hurt both sides, but really hurt Russia financially. But as far as helping out on the weapons front, do you expect that topic to be raised here in Germany today?
Well, certainly that debate is not going away. I mean, Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, has been doing the rounds of television interviews this week, explaining the move since the recognition of those regions. We're also expecting to hear from him in about an hour, I think, so it'll be interesting to see what he says then. So far, he's very much stuck to his line that providing weapons is not what Germany wants to do. And there are various arguments that he uses to back that up. But just this morning, a very senior member of the Green Party was calling for Germany to go further. The Green Party has generally been more hawkish in the course of this crisis so far. It has had a long-standing, very critical view of Russia, the direction that Russia has been going in. And there are various voices around other political parties also calling for weapons to be supplied. I would assume that the government is going to stay with this line. The reality